Welcome to the regular episode.
Hello. Madeline.
Huh.
Happy 250th.
Oh, I was like, it's not our 250th episode, but it is the 250th birthday of our illustrious nation.
The greatest nation on earth.
The only nation on earth.
Mm-hmm.
It's just us and then a bunch of proxy versions of us who are different levels of belligerent, like teenage children.
No, we have... America has heels, right?
Uh-huh.
Or let's be real. America is the heel here.
Do you think so?
I believe at one point, up until, let's call it the Brezhnev era, the Soviet Union was babyface.
Okay. I could see this. Yeah.
Vietnam, a classic babyface.
Yes. I get this. Yeah. Over on our Twitch stream that we do, my Twitch stream that I do with community, we like to map out which country is currently in which camp.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the evil empire and our proxies
to
varying degrees, a great gradient of sorts. And then we have the resistance, and they have their own gradient going on. People who are resisting us, and not all of them are people you like. Sometimes,
I'm not I am not particularly a fan of Russia as like an entity in the world.
Yeah, I'm pretty neutral on Russia. They've done a few good things. I think increasingly the funny thing about Russia is that they keep trying to play ball with the U.S. and we keep shutting them down, and it's accidentally backing them into a corner of having better politics slowly over time.
Yeah, but let's call it very slowly. They keep doing also like quite fucked up things. I'm not referring to Ukraine. I'm more referring to like poisoning random political dissidents with like
who amongst us is not
with radioactive material?
Who amongst us is not poisoned or random dissident, David?
I'm just saying.
I'm neutral on Russia.
I don't think that's like. I don't think that it like. One of these days, I'm going to be on an airplane, to London.
You think you're going to get poisoned by Russia?
No, by you.
By me?
You're
depends on if you're a dissident or not, I guess.
I'm a dissident now.
You are. There's some dissonance. I'm backing up on some dissonance. Okay, well, you know what I mean? So we chart these things, and there's a third category that we have not named anything but Poland so far, which means you're not doing anything good. You're doing your own thing, but in a very evil way. So you're resisting the West, but you're not aligned with the resistance necessarily. And the reason you're resisting the West is because you're like, listen, we don't need you to help us do fucked up things. We got our own fucked up things going on, and we're happy with how it's being invested.
Oh, I was just assuming when you said Poland as like a category, you were like the bizarre football of the other two camps, because Poland has, for its entire history, been the bizarre football of like, where it's like, sometimes it's Russia, and then it's not for a little while, right? So
they like to take over some land sometimes. They liked to do a little ethnic cleansing of Jews on their own. So when the Russians showed up, they were like, what the fuck are you doing? And then when the Nazis showed up, they were like, we've got this handled.
Yeah.
And then they made it illegal for historians to talk about them doing that.
But I guess I'm just saying, Poland has the least independent bone in it, like no independent bones in its body. It's basically just like a place that it's like a road for invading armies to go through while they go somewhere else.
Well, I think you might find that Poland has changed.
Poland has a long
scope
of history.
I understand what you're saying. Yes. So this is what we track, actually. None of this is what we're talking about today, though.
We are, in fact, however, talking about a classic babyface today.
We are. That is
in their most baby-faced era, I would say.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I really agree with that. We are doing part 2 of our multi-part series on the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
And today, I will be your host, me, Madeline.
I will be the heel.
You'll be the co-host.
The dissident.
The co-host. Maybe a little dissident. And today we're going to be talking about a specific period. This is episode 2 in the series. So we're going to be talking about the specific period in Korea between 1945 and 1950.
And this is largely covering a lot of the same ground we covered in a Patreon episode, about a year ago?
Yeah, it was a book club series on Patreon.
Book club.
covering Everyday Life in the North Korean Revolution by Susie Kim. So if you want to hear a lot more about this, go check out our Patreon. We did every single chapter of that book as its own episode. There's so much content. It's like listening to the audiobook with commentary.
Yes.
And you can find all of that there. It's patreon.com/pickmeup. I'm scared. As well as other bonus content we just uploaded last week that was a biography of Kim Il-sung, who we're going to be hearing a lot about today in today's episode.
One of the greatest men, or perhaps one of the greatest imposters.
Dun, dun, dun.
In all of history.
Well, go check out the bonus episode to learn more about that. So today's episode is going to be a little bit long because what we're going to be seeing is two very different Koreas start to develop on different sides of the 38th parallel. So where we left off was with the end of World War II.
And the 38th parallel has not been drawn as a line yet, but it will be drawn today. Yes.
Correct. Today we are going to talk about how it was drawn and how the division into two Koreas officially happened. Now, where we're going to start today's episode is actually just a few days before the end of the war. We're going to give you just a little bit leading up to the war because this is all relevant to what was happening in the 2 weeks before the war ended.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we're starting today in August of 1945. Now, if you listened to last episode, you know Korea at this point is an imperial colony of Japan.
Yes.
And Japan not treating their colonies very well.
It is. I mean, would it be fair to call Korea at this point kind of like the breadbasket or something? Or like,
I don't know. A lot of like industrial work.
Yeah, like they are like the workshop.
Yes.
Of Japan.
Yes. And this is especially true during the war.
Yeah.
They're really, really active in the war effort. So on August 1st of 1945, something called the Potsdam Agreement gets signed. And this is an agreement between the UK, the United States, and the USSR. Now, we have a few different sources for this episode. It is going to include the Susie Kim book, our professor of Korean history over at Rutgers University, Everyday Life in the North Korean Revolution. We are still carrying through some sourcing from the last episode. Bruce Cummings.
It
only has one N. Why is it pronounced that way?
I listened to an interview with
I know it's right, but it doesn't feel right because it only has one N. Cumming. It should have two M's, but whatever.
So you think this is like you think this man's name is like cumin?
Yes. I think his name is like cumin. I think he is cumining. Yes. I think his name is like cumin. Yes.
Okay.
But it is not. So he was the former chair of the history department at the University of Chicago who wrote extensively about Korea. He's now retired. And we're also going to be using a few papers as some references here. We're going to be using Mark J. Sher. I think we'll be using Christian a little bit, and we'll get into those as well. So all of these sources, as always, will be available in the notes, the description of the podcast. If you don't see it in your podcast listening app, just hit show more or like more, and you'll see them towards the bottom of everything. So this Potsdam Agreement is happening on August 1st. It's between the UK, the USA, and the USSR before the war is officially over, before World War II is officially over.
Madeline, I hate to on the pronunciation.
Oh my God, what is it?
Is it
Potsdam?
Potsdam?
No, I think it's Is it Potsdam? Fuck, why can't I pronounce it? Did I tell you, Potsdam. Yes, Potsdam.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry.
I don't pronounce anything. I told you on my live stream the other day, I pronounced Joseph, right?
I feel...
His name Joseph. I pronounced him Joseph.
Is this like an anglicized Joseph? Perhaps we're dealing with a Yosef.
Oh, no, it was just a regular guy named Joe. I call him Joe. Why can't I pronounce anything?
You are good at so many things.
And this is not one of them. This is really not my strong suit. Yes, the Potsdam Agreement is signed. Okay, so Mark J. Sher writes about this and says the clash between the U.S. and the USSR over the future of Korea flowed directly from the U.S. desire to gain Soviet help in the war against Japan. Both at Yalta and then later at Potsdam.
Yeah.
The United States secured a definite Soviet commitment to enter the Far Eastern War by August 8th. Before the A-bomb became a workable certainty, General Marshall voiced the opinion at Potsdam that the Russians would indeed be expected to fight alone in Korea. So this is kind of what's going on over this. So basically you have world superpowers getting together to talk about what is going to happen with Korea because they know Japan's not going to last, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, what do we do with this whole Korea thing? So I've got some more from Mark Share, who talks about this area in kind of detail. And what he basically says is that this conference, they were going to talk about what's going to happen with Korea. The Soviets kept asking. They were like, what's going on? Not just about Korea, but about all of these different countries that had basically been under imperial colonial control of the enemies during World War II. So Stalin and Molotov, a famous Molotov-Ribbentrop.
Yes.
Yes.
And the famous cocktail.
Yes. Said, what's going to happen with Korea? What's going to happen with all this place? What's going to happen with Korea as well? And Molotov said that he had learned from the foreign press in Italy, or that Italy, rather, had lost its colonies once and for all. So the question was, who received them? And who decided this?
Mm-hmm.
What does this mean? And Churchill replied by referring to the heavy losses that the British had suffered and the victories the British army achieved by conquering all of the colonies of Italy except.
And these colonies it's like mostly like North Africa stuff. Yes.
I think so at this time. Yeah. It's not really stuff that's going to be super relevant.
But like, I'm just like, because traditionally Italy is not the most expansive of colonial powers.
That's true.
And so
it's pretty limited. So, so the Russians are like, I heard that Italy lost all its colonies. Who made that call? And where are they now? And England's like, we fought a good war.
They are like, this is the spoils of war.
Exactly.
And
they're saying they're ours now.
Yes.
Yes.
We were watching the England-Mexico game last night.
Okay.
And of course, Mexico lost.
Well, I didn't know that, but I could tell because Bobby and I saw somebody take a Mexico flag sadly off their car the next morning.
It was
and I was like,
horrible.
Lost.
Horrible. And everyone hates the English team.
Everyone hates the English.
Everyone hates the English.
Period, yeah.
I did learn, however, that many people refer to the French team as Les Blacks.
Okay.
Because it is so full of like black players from former French colonies.
Oh, that's uncomfortable. I mean, look.
No, but they say
the same thing in the United States.
No, but they say it as like a positive. They're like, we love the blacks.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God. And it's like to differentiate from rooting for France.
Yeah.
They're like, we're rooting
for the black people playing.
Yes.
Not France.
But I was commenting because I was like, I mean, like, because everyone's so sad.
Yeah, I bet.
About England winning, because fuck England.
You never want to see England win.
Okay, but the thing about it is that the English team is made up of so many sort of like former colonials that you can kind of root for the English if you just like lock in. Yes?
Yeah, well, what, David, you know what? Truth be told, I'm always rooting for the working class.
Yes.
Internationally, every country.
Okay.
Even England.
Oh, yeah. A peek behind the curtain, we had a break in the middle of this digression, and now I forget the point of the digression.
Oh, it's okay. You know what? You're talking about it because England was like, we've claimed all of Italy's colonies.
Oh, yes.
And Russia was like, when the fuck did this get decided?
Okay.
So we're back at the Potsdam.
Potsdam. Let's just, you know what? We're calling it Potsdam. We're calling it the Potsdam.
So
yeah,
Stalin is like, heard, is this going to be how Korea's going to be settled as well?
Mm-hmm.
We're just, whoever shows up guns and blazing gets to claim Korea, or England just steps in? What's going on here? And Truman and Churchill are silent. They're like, So,
and I mean, right, Churchill, one of the biggest chauvinists in history, who did like war crimes in the Boer War.
Yeah.
And Truman, somewhat famously, kind of a dum-dum.
Yes.
I think that would you say that's fair?
I think that's fair. So, they say nothing. They're caught in the act. And, Truman came to with a huge background, position papers on Korea, and came prepared to actually talk about it. So why were they quiet when this happened? Well, Churchill actually talked about that. And this was something reflected by Stimson at the time. So Stimson says, Churchill told me that he noticed at the 3 yesterday that Truman was evidently much fortified by something that had happened, and that he stood up to the Russians in a most emphatic and decisive manner. Truman told the Russians just where they got off and on, and generally bossed the whole meeting. Churchill said he now understood how this pepping up had taken place, and that he felt the same way. So, confiding in Churchill, Truman had said he received word of the successful testing of the atom bomb in New Mexico, and then he informed Ambassador Harriman that if the Japanese surrendered prior to the Soviet occupation, American forces would land in Korea. So this eventuality obviously was not presented to Stalin, as is explained here. Stalin didn't know this. So Truman immediately ordered a crash program, cost and precautions notwithstanding, to assemble and drop the remaining A-bombs on Japan before August 8th in an attempt to check Soviet participation. Now,
okay, that's interesting.
According to Mark G. Scherer.
So, right, generally speaking, the way the narrative about America, the only country who has ever dropped a nuclear weapon on another country, is told as like, well, they did it to end the war and save American lives.
Yes.
But it was actually a part of this like larger play with the Soviet Union.
Yes. And you know what? Fun fact, I actually wrote a paper about this in high school.
Oh, I told you.
I did. So yeah. So the quote ends, "This helps explain the American haste to atomize the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, who were the first victims of the Cold War rather than last of the Second World War." So I like that framing. That's good positioning. So yes, you should always remember that we did not drop nuclear weapons to end World War II. We dropped them to kind of basically punk the USSR.
Like it was a little bit of a, like, see what we got.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah, fuck you. Don't get too comfy. So, you know, when Stalin is like, well, what's going to happen to Korea? They're like, well, you know what's going to happen to Korea is that if Japan surrenders fast, which we think they are, we're just going to fucking drop nuclear weapons on them.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of the plan, and it's to scare you. But we can't say that right now. So here's what happened. So on August 8th, 7 days later, the USSR begins fighting the Japanese in Korea. And that same day, according to Mark J. Scherer, General Abe, A-B-E, spelled like Abe, Japanese Governor General of Korea, sent an emissary to the home of the right-wing leader Song Jin-woo, saying that he should become civil administrator for Korea. So the emissary said, "The war is practically over, Mr. Song. You must accept the post of administrator. There will be bloody riots. Once that happens, there's no telling what will occur politically. Left-wingers might come into control. Bolshevism will take over." And as Mark J. Scherer says, on this subject, the former Japanese Governor General and the new American occupation authorities were to see eye to eye. So what's going on basically is that Japan and the United States are both like, this war is ending. Japan will lose. Korea will go full-blown communist and riots will happen in the streets. We need a right-wing crackdown set up in place before the war is officially over to stop these Koreans from going commie.
I mean, was this not kind of America's policy more generally? I
Yes.
remember when we talked, I think of it, this was the Air America episode, we talked about the fact that in China, many of the people put in control of like American controlled areas of China after, or were actually just like the Japanese administrators or collaborators from the war.
Yes.
Right.
Totally. This is exactly what they're trying to set up. I always say this, the United States has one playbook and there's not very many plays in it. So in mid-August, the organization that would later come to be the actual Korean government following Japan's surrender was officially formed, and this was called the Committee for the Preparation of Korean Independence. Now, 2 days after this kind of note gets sent, on August 10th, Soviet troops began pretty much like larger operations all along the coast of northern Korea, and this includes water operations and land operations. And that day and the next day is also when the preliminary division of Korea at the 38th parallel happens, but it's not officially set in stone yet. So remember, the Americans are kind of in this race against the clock about the USSR showing up in Korea.
So like the USSR, to be clear, their intent is not the race to colonization.
No.
They're essentially like, we see that you guys are racing to colonization, and we would like to prevent that from happening.
Well, at this time, they're just in Korea to fight Japan.
Okay.
So they're not even thinking that they want to be in control of Korea. Here's where the USSR's thought process is. We're fighting the war, World War II. We are in it to win it. The war is almost over. We are going to take Japan out. The fighting is in Korea. Now, if you're the Americans, you're like, there's an awful lot of communists in Korea. The second the USSR shows up there, there's going to be cementing Bolshevik energy going on. There's going to be a synergy happening between all these Korean communists and the USSR. So we better hurry up and get our footing there too. Ideologically, we're at a disadvantage.
Gotcha.
So they're going to be the big time war heroes, and they're going to be neck and neck with all the Korean communists all chummy. We got to get in there and get some good old fashioned.
Like, we got to get our guys in there.
We got to get our guys in there. Exactly. That's more the thought process going on. So, Bruce Cummings.
No, we're going with Bruce Cumin. I'm sorry. It is Potsdam and Cumin.
And Cumin. Thank you. And I'm sure Joseph Stalin will understand.
Yes.
Cumin says, it's Americans who bear the lion's share of the responsibility for the 38th parallel. There's just like myth going on in the West that it was like the USSR and the United States. It fucking was not. It's made up. It was the United States. We did this and the UN helped us. So Mark J. Scherer says, contrary to wide belief, the division of Korea at the 38th parallel was never discussed at any of the wartime conferences, but came from a suggestion of the U.S. War Department when Secretary of State Burns suggested to Truman that American forces be sent into Korea, quote, as far north as practicable. Now, remember, think about from the last episode, the geography of Korea. It's very, very mountainous. The north is extremely rugged mountain terrain, though. So when they say as far north as practicable, well, you know, it's not, they know it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to go take over all of Korea. There's a bunch of Korea that they consider basically unusable land that's really close to China. There's a lot of revolutionaries hiding in the hills. They don't really want the hills. So they're like, as far north as we can get until it becomes inconvenient for both us and politically.
Mm-hmm. So they're like, you know what? We don't actually need the good stuff, or like, we don't need everything. We just need the good stuff.
Exactly. And the South is what's better for farming, better for resources. That's what they would really want to be in charge of anyway. And that's where most of the people are living. So the backstory on this is that negotiating the surrender of Japan, obviously, yes, meant deciding what would do with their colonies. What would happen, rather, with their colonies, what we would do with them, I guess, in the United States. So as early as 1942, it turns out the U.S. State Department had been thinking about the United States having a trusteeship over Korea. Mm-hmm. So this is all 3 years earlier.
So they're thinking we're just going to turn Korea into the Philippines.
Exactly, yes. So the United States knew that they wanted to take over control of Korea from Japan, but they were afraid also, again, 3 years earlier than this, that a trusteeship might not work because the people of Korea, remember, what was happening when they were taken over by the Japanese? They're killing themselves on the streets, they're lighting buildings on fire, they're running around with guns, they're like, over our fucking dead bodies. Like, these people are not going down with it.
It is funny, like, this is like a more... on the, like, this presents the American perspective as, like, quite a bit more jaundiced and, frankly, pragmatic than one would usually, because, like, the usual belief is, like, we will be seen as liberators and everyone will love us, right? Like, this is, but, like, I actually find it really interesting that there is a pragmatic, realistic understanding of the politics on the ground.
Yes.
Does that make any sense? Because, like,
it totally does.
Right,
There's no rose-tinted glasses here. The United States is like, they are communists and they will hate us, but we are taking it.
Yeah, I like that as a picture of us on our 250th birthday.
It's very us.
It's cynical.
So us. Yeah.
It is pragmatic. It is, evil.
Yeah, it is evil. And so everybody's thinking about this. And the United States is like 3 years away from the war ending. Like, we want that Korea. That Korea's looking real good. We want that. But let's be real. A trusteeship, they're all just going to commit suicide and protest and light all our buildings on fire. It's not going to go well. So we would need a full military occupation as soon as the war is over to ensure that there is a predominant American voice in the post-war, Korean affairs. Mm. So we knew three years beforehand, we're taking it, and they're not going to let us do it, so we're going to show up with the military and do it by force. So our guy Cumin says, it might be a short occupation, or it might be one of those considerable durations. The main point was that no other power should have a role in Korea such that, quote, the proportionate strength of the U.S. would be reduced to a point where its effectiveness would be weakened. This is a quote from American documents.
So essentially what they're saying, because that's a bizarre way of putting that,
yes,
is we would like to be the main guys in there. Anyone else who's in there, they have to be so ineffectual that we control the board.
Right, exactly. So what the documents basically said is we might be there for a little bit, we might be there for a long time. However long it takes, that all of the other influence, Japanese, Russian, British, is off the table. And it's just us.
Are the British looking at Korea?
Well, the British, remember, like, the British had been kind of, people didn't have as unfavorable a view as the British in Korea at this time. I think we referenced it a little bit in our first episode. It wasn't a major point of any issue that came up again and again. But it's one of those things where like, oh, you don't like us, you might like the British better. I don't know. But
I mean, that
was passed around.
Like 1945, Britain is a giant crater. Right, I'm just gonna throw that out.
Well, you got the powers fighting Japan, the Greek.
No, I guess just like in terms of like political and economic power.
Yeah.
They are a crater. They're not like that.
They're taking over Italy's former colonies
for like a couple years.
Right.
Then...
But this is a thing the United States is thinking about. So they're like, there's going to be a lot of influence there. We got to be the guys, big guys on the ground. So no other administration actually was interested in Korea, though. It was just the United States. But they worried that if the Soviets just were there at all, it would naturally influence the people of Korea because their politics were so aligned, and it would just be bad for business. So Roosevelt figured that by inviting the Soviets to help administer half of the country, they would ensure the Soviets wouldn't have say in all of it, and they could kind of limit and restrict the Soviets to an inhospitable, largely unoccupied part of the country.
Okay.
That honestly was full of most of the revolutionaries and communists.
I mean, this is like you ever see like you tell two kids that they have to share something, or you tell a kid he has to share his cookie, and he breaks off the most it's the part of the cookie with no frosting.
Right, and it's like you get to divide it, but you get to choose the piece.
Well, but this is like you don't do the second part, and
right.
It's like the
United States is like, we're dividing it and we're choosing our piece. Yeah. So the general consensus was that basically, Roosevelt had in mind that, this is a quote from Cuman, the former colonial territories, once free of their masters, would become politically and economically dependent upon the United States and had no fear that the other powers might fill that role. So this is what Roosevelt was thinking. Okay, fine. Japan loses. They're technically free or whatever. Korea's not going to be able to take care of itself because at that point, we're going to have so many guys on the ground. We're going to have taken over so much. They're going to immediately transition into being politically and economically dependent on us.
Sick.
Right. So that's the plan. So March 1943, we're still 2 years and some change before the end of the war. The United States took the initiative on all of these great power deliberations on Korea. Guess who was not consulted?
The Koreans.
The Korean people. Of course not. So the U.S. suggested this multilateral trusteeship for post-war Korea to the British, and then later on they mentioned it to the Soviets in passing. Not super important, I guess. So Roosevelt worried about the disposition of enemy-held colonial territories, right? This is the verbiage here. And, was like, hey, a lot of these colonies want independence. So Roosevelt was like, we got to act like we're setting them up for independence or they're going to be real mad. So the system here for preparing these people like Korea for our takeover is basically to tell them that we're actually preparing them for self-governance and independence. And we're just helping to guide them into it.
Gotcha.
And the Korean people are going to see through this immediately. They're immediately going to be like, fucking hell you are. But, the Americans are optimistic that this will work. So he knew that since Korea touched the Soviet border, the Russians would obviously be like, you can't do whatever the fuck you want to our neighbor, not consult us at least. So he was like, maybe we can get the USSR to commit to overseeing this multilateral administration where they take the area touching them that we don't give a fuck about anyway. And this will kind of postpone any conflict we might have with them over this. So they basically decided, the Americans unilaterally, that Korean independence would come in, quote, due course. And this is a phrase they use a lot. And they don't actually have any intention of guiding Korea to independence, so to say, shepherding them there. But this phrase, in due course, gets used a lot. It becomes like the phrase that sticks.
I mean, would you say that some of the, how do I put this? The kind of racist, patronizing attitude of well, we have to raise them up to govern themselves is at work here.
So this is the sales pitch.
Yeah.
The racism is the sales pitch.
Yeah.
So that's not the motive, though.
The motive is like, we want to be in there.
We want Korea. We want that territory. So the sales pitch is, we all know the poor, pathetic Korean people can't manage themselves. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like the weird racist thing we do. So this was actually going to be the exact phrase in due course that would be used in the November 1943 declaration of the Cairo Conference, where Roosevelt met with Winston Churchill and Chiang Kai-shek.
Hell yeah.
So nobody, it's worth noting, liked this idea at this conference.
I'm going to find out who is not there.
Korea, not there. No. So nobody at the Cairo Conference likes this idea. And the United States shows up and they're like, oh my God, we just came up with this totally cool idea. I don't know, maybe you like it. We'll just like kind of be in charge of the quote unquote good half of Korea, and then like the USSR can help with the rest. And in due course, they'll become independent. Just like a thought, guys. What do you think? And everybody's like, fuck you. Literally everybody's like, we know what you're doing. So the British and the French hate this idea. They're like, so you're coming for our empire? You want to fuck with our empire? You want to build your own empire at the expense of our empire? Why don't we take it over? That could be our empire. Why do you hate our empire?
I gotta love the fact that like at this point, realistically, all of the empires are on their way down.
Yes.
Right? Like independence is coming.
Yes.
Right? And so they are like sort of trying to claw back something.
Exactly.
And the United States, meanwhile, is like, we have this like really cool way of doing colonialism that you've never fucking even seen. Oh my God.
People don't even know they're being colonized.
It rocks. Like, we're just going to create a bunch of like economic relationships with like certain people, like certain sectors of the economy that seem to really benefit us, and maybe have like a puppet government.
Yes, exactly. So the Korean people hear about this and they're like, well, this is fucking humiliating. We're not going to go just from Japan's hands to yours. Like, What are you talking about? And the USSR kind of, honestly, was mute on it. Didn't really, they were like, what is happening here? They didn't really have any statements for the positive or the negative. They're just like, all right. Like, I'm sure they were just like, of course, the United States is doing United States shit, and we don't want to have a war with the United States. So how the fuck are we going to manage this? So, Cummings says Stalin was mostly silent in wartime discussions with Roosevelt about Korea. And he would either just like humor Roosevelt and like let him talk and be like, oh, okay. Or say, hey, I think the Koreans are going to want independence.
That was an excellent Joseph Stalin.
I'm sorry, it's Joseph?
Joseph Stalin.
Joseph
Stalin. That was. Oh, okay. I am now doing an impression of Madeline doing an impression of Joseph Stalin.
Stalin.
But
that was pretty much his thing, and everybody pretty much assumed that Stalin thought this was super naive. That Stalin was looking at Korea and was like, you think those people are going to be okay with quote unquote in due course? So he didn't really say outright like, this isn't going to fucking work, and no. But he was like, oh, do you think that's going to work on that? It seems like they might want to be independent. I don't know. Was really trying to do diplomacy and not upset the Americans. And that was...
And technically at this point, they're still allies. Yes.
Yes. So ironically, the country that was the most okay with this plan, Japan. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, presumably Japan is like, we're getting our asses handed to us.
Yes, they know.
Right. Like, someone's got to take Korea.
Yeah.
Like, I love, again,
nobody is like, just let Korea. Honestly, the USSR is the only people that were like, they seem like they would like to just be independent. I don't know.
I mean, or they're just like, we kind of don't know. Right? Like, that seems like when you were like, the USSR was largely silent. They're just like, oh, like...
Yeah, I think the main thing, the USSR's motives, from most historians looking through documents at this time, appears to just be that they don't want a war with the United States, but they also are not going to let the United States just take over everything.
Yeah, so they're just like...
They're in an appeasement pattern here.
They're like, we got to pick our battles.
Yes.
Like...
This is exactly it. So... Japan, though, is like, look, we're worried that communists and independence agitators are going to take advantage of this power vacuum when the war ends and just seize all of Korea. And guess what? That's going to be bad for everybody's business. Korea goes commie, that's bad for Japan's business. But United States takes over Korea, well, we can still do business there. We can still make money. And then we don't have communists right next to us. So God forbid we have a communist revolution. That would be horrible.
I will say, it is, like, I am currently at Madeline's house.
Yes.
It is in fact not great to have a communist neighbor. I've polled your neighbors.
Oh, really?
No, I have not.
Really?
But
You're
no.
doing McCarthy and block.
Yeah, I'm going door to door with like a picture of you with like a hammer and sickle on it, just like.
Yeah, and the feedback you're getting is they're like, Madeline's largely fine. We don't love the giant light up hammer and sickle on the roof. It's lit up bright red at all hours of the night and day. We can't sleep from the blinding red light of the hammer and sickle blazing glory through our windows.
The
International's playing at full volume all day and night on repeat. It's kind of like a prison torture system.
You do not want communists as neighbors.
This is what happens.
Yes.
This is what happens. And I just want to come over and talk to you about trains. It doesn't go well for anybody. So the idea was for the United States to first occupy Korea and then to see if a trusteeship could later be worked out with the Russians, the British, and the Chinese, but Chiang Kai-shek, China. So in the first quarter of 1944, the U.S. State Department actually prepared a paper about this prospect. And again, remember, this is like a whole year before the war is officially over. And the paper says, the assumption by the United States of a major part in civil affairs and in international supervision of an interim government would be greatly facilitated by the participation of the United States in such military operations as take place in and around Korea. I should also mention the possibility of a military government in Korea, quote, hopefully for a short period, but potentially for one of considerable duration. That's where that info comes from.
So they went from in due time to like...
Well, we might be there a long time.
Due time is vague. That is just like
considerable duration.
Maybe time is due in a century.
Maybe. Exactly.
Yeah.
So right away, they're like, look, no matter how this war goes, we got to position ourselves that American troops are fighting in Korea because then it's like de facto occupation. We're already there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's their goal going into the last year of the war. Now, on August 10th and 11th, John J. McCloy, of the State War Navy Coordinating Committee directs two young colonels. Remember, this is all around the same time. Dean Rusk and Charles H. Bonesteel.
Hell yeah.
That's a good name.
Hell yeah.
It's a good name, yeah. To go to a nearby room, right, away from him, and just find a place on a map to divide Korea. Mm-hmm. It is midnight between August 10th and 11th. You have two random dudes from the United States Navy who are just looking at a map of Korea going, here seems fine. What has happened at this point? The atomic bombs have been dropped. Okay? The Soviet Red Army has entered the Pacific War. American planners are rushing to arrange the Japanese surrender throughout the region. They have 30 minutes to do this.
Hell yeah.
These two
I love that is...
That's American.
So cool.
You've heard of fast food? How about fast partition?
I want that job so bad. I want to be the guy where they're just like, look, you have an hour. In this case, half an hour. Figure out where the borders of this country are. Just do it. Here's a Sharpie and...
a ruler.
Have
a blast. And this is exactly what happens. They got 30 minutes. They look at a map and they choose the 38th parallel because it would place the capital city, Seoul, in the American zone. And they're like, this is as far north as we could probably get. We run into a lot more mountains, whatever. This is where it's going to be. And it is so arbitrary. These guys don't even know the 30th parallel literally divides towns in half.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Just so American.
These guys are so cool.
They're so American, yeah. So Arthur Christian writes about this in a paper called Early History of U.S. Imperialism in Korea and says, Seoul, which was the traditional capital of Korea for centuries, right? The headquarters of the giant bureaucratic structure created by the Japanese, 2/3 of Korea's population, a good share of its industry, a substantial part of the agricultural capacity, etc., lay south of the 38th parallel. Thus, the USA, which only a few days later was unwilling to engage the Japanese forces in Korea and Manchuria and was against the independence of Korea, conceived of the proposal to create two zones so that it might play a little politico-ideological role in the developing situation in Korea in a decisive manner. It sought to ensure such a role for itself by its military presence and occupation.
Gotcha. So, initially, the United States is like, we don't actually give a shit about Korea. We're just going to drop. And then they're like, actually, if the Soviets are even there, we got to be there too.
We got to be there too. Well, we wanted to take ownership of Korea, but we had no interest in like fighting on the front.
Yeah.
So for the final year of the war, the only reason we started fighting on the front lines in Korea was to have justification to occupy.
Yeah.
So the whole last year of the fighting against the Japanese in Korea probably was unnecessary for the United States to engage in to win the war. We literally just showed up to be there, to be in Korea, like settler colonization style, but like war edition. So American officials obviously, again, consulted no Koreans in coming to the decision on the 30th parallel, nor did they ask the opinions of the British or the Chinese, both who were supposed to help take part in this planned trusteeship for Korea. The decision was unilateral. The decision was hasty. And the line was further north than could be reached realistically if the Soviets disagreed, right? They're like, this is going to be... If it's further north, it's going to be like pretty hard for anyone to fight over. It's super mountainous, super gnarly. So they thought this made sense. To everybody's surprise, the USSR didn't really object. And they were actually so surprised by this, the Americans. Rusk in particular, who's one of the two guys who divided the map, was like, oh, I kind of thought they'd fight with us about it. We'd have to like justify it. But they didn't. They were just like, whatever. Again, picking and choosing battles.
Yeah, they were just like,
get this war over.
We're already only getting like a little bit of Germany.
Yeah.
Like.
Right. And they're like, honestly, we've lost millions of people. Our resources low. Just fuck it. End the war. Just end the war. Whatever, man. So the Japanese forces stationed north of the 38th parallel had this plan to surrender. So they were supposed to surrender the Soviet forces, and the ones south of the 38th parallel were supposed to surrender to the American forces. We'll see this does not actually happen. Oh, spoiler alert. The forces in the north are like, we are not surrendering to the Russians. They're going to kill us.
Yeah.
Because they fucking hate us and they don't fuck with fascists. We'll go to the Americans because those are actually our friends at CDH. So all of the fascist forces north of the 38th parallel are like, get to the south.
Like, I mean,
the USSR is there with guns like, fuck you, fuck you.
I mean, like, the USSR did have a more, let's say, black and white policy when it came to, like, denazification in Europe. Like, they were just like, I mean, they not totally. They would fuck with it. Yeah.
But usually what they would do, honestly, is like the Americans would bring the Nazis in and be like, here is your illustrious new job and new identity, working at NASA. We hope you enjoy your beautiful 3-story home in the suburbs. The USSR would be like, hey, the Nazis pretty good at calculus. Get them over here and put them in a labor camp and make them do math and shit for our space.
They would also do a really funny thing where they like Operation Paperclip style, where they would be like, you're a Nazi? You're our Nazi now, go to the Americans.
Yes.
And, like, report, like...
Yeah, they would do that. Yeah, they would employ them in more, I'm going to say, degrading positions. The Americans would be like, thank you for your beautiful Nazi brain. It's brilliant. And the USSR would be like, fuck this Nazi, you're going to do humiliating shit for us.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny, I guess. So August 13th comes around. Harry Truman officially approves of this division of Korea and is like, hey, Britain and USSR, we did a thing. Here's what we did. What do you think?
This is now a fait accompli. This is ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Exactly. And again, everyone's just like, whatever, man, sure.
Yeah.
So the day after this happens, Japan officially surrenders. And the Korean people, not fully aware of what's going on, are like, oh my God, we're going to get to be independent, finally. This is what we've been fighting for. This is what we want. This is obviously not what happens, and it's a very heartbreaking, sad moment. So Mark Teixeira writes about this and says, immediately after Japan's surrender in August, the Japanese governor-general released all political prisoners in exchange for the safety of Japanese nationals. So basically, like, we'll let your guys go if you let our people live. Like, don't hunt them in the street and kill them. We'll release our political prisoners here in Korea. So this precipitated this huge outpouring of political activity as long-suppressed nationalist and communist groups moved above ground. So all of a sudden, all the communist and the nationalist resistance groups are like, yeah, and guess what? We've been here all along.
And that goes really well for them.
Well, that goes really pretty well for them in the North, but not so good for everybody else. So he goes on and says, as the left took charge in the countryside, a broad united national front of nationalists and communists was formed to build a native Korean political and economic institution. This front took form in the People's Committees. So we talked a little bit at the end of the last episode about the People's Committees, and this would pretty immediately become the new de facto government of Korea on the ground. So many leftists and activists who had been political prisoners under Japanese imperial rule when they emerge, they immediately get to work organizing these people's committees. We're talking like Save Day. Like, all right, cool, we're free now. You go over here, let's do this, let's do that. And we really see the nationalists and the communists in Korea coming together in a way that's unprecedented anywhere else in history, kind of. And this makes more sense if you listen to our Kim Il-sung bonus episode.
Yeah.
Because of how he kind of helped rally everything.
And he burned the files, right?
Yes.
Like,
you don't give it all away here. Let the people have a...
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I'm just going to say the following thing. I'm not going to tell you what files he burned.
Oh, he burned some files.
I'm going to say Kim Il-sung burned some files in a way that was historic and unifying and beautiful.
Yes.
But what files and why were they so important?
Oh, okay, that's good. That's a pretty good teaser. I like that. But this lasts like one day because on August 15th, everybody kind of gets to work. This is also the first day, though, that Koreans hear the voice of Emperor Hirohito on the radio, broadcasting that Japan has surrendered and Korea is officially liberated. But he's not the only person doing things at this time, right? We know, for example, this same day, General Douglas MacArthur, who is considered the hero of the Pacific campaigns, issues General Order Number 1 for Japanese surrender. And this is what actually makes public the 38th parallel decision.
If I understand correctly, MacArthur's kind of a sociopath. Like, he is like...
Yeah.
He's like a murderous, like, freak.
Yes, he is. So when the Korean people hear this, the voice on the radio, they hear about the division, they're quiet and apprehensive. They don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So the following day, Soviet troops reach as far south as a town called Wonsan, and this is what officially prompts Truman to send a message to the Soviets saying, hey, by the way, remember, we're dividing Korea at the 38th parallel. Let's do that now.
Okay, so Wonsan is south of the 38th parallel.
No, they're just getting close.
Oh, gotcha.
So I'm pretty sure, my understanding, but let's double check.
Okay.
But my understanding was always like, they're approaching, maybe just, they're just approaching it. So
gotcha.
They're like, still a ways off. Yeah.
That's like crazy far away.
Well, it was too close for comfort.
That's crazy far away.
It's, they're moving from the Soviet border. So the Soviet Union is like, okay, the closest American troops to Korea at the time are still in Okinawa, 600 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
And the USSR's got like the only allied troops there right now out of the two.
Oh, so now I understand why it's like they're moving around it all.
Yeah.
Fuck you guys.
Yeah.
Like,
they're like, hey, by the way, we're fighting it. Yeah. So American troops at the time were still in Japan. So remember, American troops wanted to be in the Korean arena, but they were fighting in Japan. They just wanted to be close enough to Korea during the final year. So if they were close enough, they could arrive in 2 weeks, though. And we'll see that's what happens. So Cummings says the Russians accepted in silence this division into spheres while demanding a Russian occupation of the northern part of Hokkaido in Japan, which MacArthur refused. So they were like, all right, whatever with Korea. Let's talk about these fascists in fucking Japan now.
Yeah.
Let us take some of that shit. Fuck these people. And the United States is like, absolutely not. We know we fought them in this war because that's how the cookie crumbled, but actually those are kind of our guys. We actually don't like them so much.
Are we going to get Japanese administrators at any point doing stuff?
In the United States?
No, in Korea.
Well, we're going to get a handoff.
Okay.
We're going to get a big handoff. So the people in Korea finally on August 16th do allow themselves to rejoice. They're not exactly sure what's going to happen, but as Susie Kim writes, the streets were filled with celebration. People paraded, congregated in huge numbers. Panya Shavchina, a member of the Soviet consulate stationed in Seoul between 1940 and 1946, was there to bear witness. She wrote in her diary for August 16th, 1945, that every 200 or 300 meters, there were spontaneous assemblies, people making impassioned speeches, singing, crying, embracing. In villages throughout the peninsula, people began organizing almost immediately, creating peacekeeping and self-governing organizations to take over the colonial administration. So Japanese intelligence reports intercepted by Americans at this time described an electric situation going on in the north in particular. They said Soviet forces and Korean committees are taking charge of public security. Remember, these are Japanese intelligence reports that the Americans intercepted, right? All policemen have been disarmed. All Japanese are in a state of extreme terror. Though the city is generally quiet and calm, Koreans are demonstrating with Soviet and Korean flags and pasting posters everywhere. Though no trouble has yet developed between Japanese and Korean people, it is feared among the Japanese that robbery, crime, and violence may develop. Though there have been no changes in government, financial organizations, companies, and factories, the chiefs of police stations have been changed to Koreans. The local government office and administrative powers were taken over immediately by the advancing forces and turned over to the Committee for the Reconstruction of Korea. The weapons at the police station were turned over to the Hwanthae Guardians of the Peace Organization, a branch of the above-mentioned committee, and the Korean policemen wearing civilian clothes are assisting the Hwanthae in maintaining public peace. So this is kind of inspiring, right? You get chills hearing this. You're like, oh my God, like finally the Korean people have this win. And it's just so heartbreaking how this win does not last. In the South in particular. This is in the North, they get a longer win.
Yeah.
They get 5 years of a win.
I do like, it is one of those, like the celebration with like anxiety feels, I don't know, like, that feels like almost a stand-in for the entirety of like North Korea's history of like,
yes,
you get a win, but like it will be partial and annoying and not quite the win you.
Yeah, that's true. So the political prisoners, like we mentioned, all got released, and it was a lot of them. 20,000 political prisoners were released on August 16th alone across the country. So these were young men, and some of them had also not gone to prison, right? Some of them had, instead of resisting, been forcefully conscripted into the Japanese Imperial Army. So you have a bunch of young guys returning home, some from prisons, right, who had been fighting against the Japanese occupation, some from the Japanese Imperial Army who had been forced into it against their will. So they all start going home. So in Seoul, 1,000 quote-unquote patriots were released from one prison alone, beginning at 10 in the morning, and they had spontaneous speeches, the singing of the Korean national anthem, and the singing of the international.
Hell, okay. Yeah. And the Americans are like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
What the fuck is this?
The Americans are like, this is worse than we thought. Holy shit, they're all communists. And a lot of people in the West really want to be resistant to the idea that Koreans were communists before before the 30th parallel happened. They were communists. That's why the 30th parallel happened. Like, when we tell you the Korean people were communists, they were fucking communists. Some of them were nationalists, but even they were cool with the communists.
Though I mean, right, I believe you, and you have given more evidence, the singing of the international, because that plays regularly in this house to the detriment of your fucking neighbors.
Right.
You gotta update your communism, Madeline.
Well, there's a few hardcore bands. There's a couple.
What? The Dicks?
No. Oh, that would be a good guess, though.
The Dicks are, specifically, they have said in interviews they're not communist.
No, I don't think they are.
But they have the hammer and sickle on the cover.
Yeah. I like the Dicks. No, apparently there's some random European hardcore Bobby was showing. He's like, look at these random communist, European hardcore bands. I'm like,
I feel like I encountered that at some point, and I was like, these bands kind of suck.
Yeah, well, you can't be picky.
You can be picky.
You can be picky. Communist music. Have you seen the communist graphic design?
You know my thing.
What?
I will never be yelled at by a vegan graphic designer.
Okay. Well, I yell at you all the time.
Yes, but you're not. Okay. If a man is going to yell at me, you're allowed to yell at me.
Okay, thank you.
If a man, I've said this is my taste in music.
Yes.
If a man is going to yell at me.
With a microphone. He can
and like a guitar.
Yeah.
I would like to be scared of him, and I am not scared of any vegan graphic designers.
Well, yet. Wait until the revolution, David. You don't know what they have in store for you.
I almost died in a class warfare this weekend.
You did, that's true. We didn't talk about this on here, but David was at some sort of riots in Newport Beach.
Yeah.
4th of July.
I have a burner TikTok account in which I encourage teenagers from the surrounding areas to cover parts of Orange County.
How I wish that were true. So while all this is going on, the singing of the international, the spontaneous speeches, rickshaw drivers start fighting to be the first people to take the prisoners home. That's how much camaraderie.
They're like, oh my God, I get to participate by
taking these. They're like heroes to the people. They're like, you stood up. Remember how they were tortured? And remember what we talked about in the last episode? Even if you weren't a communist, the communists were so tortured, so not only publicly harmed physically, but run through the ringer psychologically, that they became these symbols of Korean resistance even to people who weren't communists.
No, but this is the entire fucking world. This is Italy, this is Germany, this is every place that everyone's like, who were the people who really fucking did shit, who were the resistance.
It was all the
and so all over the fucking world, communist parties weren't maybe ascendant and let's not get out of hand here, but they were very popular.
Nobody who went through World War II could deny what the communists had done. The communists hung Mussolini up, right?
Yeah.
The communists in Yugoslavia stayed when the government fled, and they defeated the Nazis. Like, the communists really did this. So the released prisoners would end up playing key roles as soon as they returned to their hometowns. They would take up leadership positions in these people's committees. Local elders were often touted as the leader, but the actual work was carried out by these younger activists with political experience in this decolonial, anti-colonial movement from before. So maintaining peace and security, that was the first thing they tried to do. They had a variety of different organizational names going on. There were security force, peacekeeping force, self-governing committee, political committee, and again, of course, the People's Committee. They were all basically doing the same thing. They were trying to ensure safety and security for everybody and kind of take over control from Japan. Now, the next day, August 17th, the Korean Communist Party officially reemerges from underground. And Pak Hun-yong was a communist revolutionary during the days of Imperial Japan who was rumored to have fled the USSR. He had actually been working undercover at a brick factory in Gwangju, which is a city in South Korea. So on the day of surrender, he, for example, starts making his way back to Seoul. And there he is the one who reorganizes the Korean Communist Party. And this was so successful that some communists from the north would later come down and join him. And local organizations started gaining numbers, more people started signing up, and they were really, really strong pretty immediately. Now, 12 days later, August 29th, American forces of the 24th Corps of the 10th Army are tasked to formally get this occupation of Korea going because they're like, urgent, you're the ones who are closest geographically. We just need you to show up. Communism's everywhere.
Yeah.
We got to get in there fast. So they sent 21 ships, including 5 destroyers from Japan over to Korea. The colonial government general radioed into Okinawa and said, local Japanese authorities eagerly await the arrival of the Allied forces. Remember, the Japanese are still there while this is happening, going. And this is when they're sending the cables like, they're going to come kill us. Right? Mm-hmm. So they're still there. So Japan writes to... the colonial Japan, rather, writes to proper Japan or cable radios, and says, okay, local Japanese authorities eagerly await the arrival of the Allied forces and urgently desire that the Allied forces willfully take into consideration the actual conditions on the spot before proceeding with the disarmament of Japanese forces and the transfer of administrative organs from the Japanese hand. So what does this mean? They're basically like, even though we're enemies in this war, we're allied in the greater fight against communism, very obviously.
I mean, this is going back to the Air America episode, that same thing of like, hey guys, we are the bulwark against communism.
Yes.
Bear that in mind when you're fighting us.
The fascists and the capitalists will always join forces to not capitulate to communism in any way. And this is exactly what happens. So the Japanese and the Americans pretty quickly become buddy-buddy. And the Japanese in Korea, rather than seeing Americans as an enemy force after the war, view them as the people who will keep them safe from the evil Koreans. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly kind of the vibe going on. And that's why the Japanese people still in Korea are like, tell the Americans not to take our guns away too fast because we don't want the Koreans like hurting us, basically. Mm-hmm. Which is ironic because they had just spent like decades hurting the Korean people.
Just like straight up torturing them, killing their like leaders. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So people in Korea, remember, had heard word that they were supposed to be divided. And even though everybody was celebrating, that was in the back of their minds. They're like, we can't let that happen. So they were not happy about this. So a key organizer of the Korean People's Republic in Seoul at the time was Yo Eun-yong, who was known to the Americas as Liu Woon-hyung. And the Committee for the Promotion of Korean Independence was set up under Woon-hyung as the leader. And so this actually was the overwhelming like government body managing 145 people's committees that had all popped up by the end of August alone. Mm-hmm. So you have a local government going on. And so the key organizer in Seoul of 145 people's committees is this activist Woon-hyung.
So the Americans are still in Okinawa at this point?
Yeah, well, this is all getting set up.
Or they're like on their way.
They're on the way.
They're on the way.
Yeah, 12 days to get there.
They're like on a boat and they're like getting a phone call and like a big like cartoonish like boat telephone.
Yes.
That's like, hey guys, I know you said it's like the parents are coming home.
Yes.
And like the kids are there and it's like the like one responsible kid is like, hey, I know you said to keep them from throwing a party. However, there is a rager going on right this minute, and it has taken over the entire fucking house.
Right. So they're like, call the cops.
Yeah.
Call the cops. Yeah. So Woo Hyung had participated in the founding of the Korean Provisional Government in 1919, and 2 years later went with Kim Cusick to the Congress of the Toilers of the Far East in Moscow. So when he came back, though, remember, this is right after the revolution in Russia. They're fighting a civil war. Things are bad. He comes back and he's like, the conditions in Russia are really, really bad. Mm-hmm. Everybody's extremely poor. Remember, before the revolution, their life expectancy was like 35 years old, right? Mm-hmm. So people were very poor in Russia. That's why they had a revolution. And in 1919, they were now still fighting like a civil war to maintain control of the revolution. So when he came back, he was like, the conditions in Korea are better than they are in Russia. But also, he's aware that it's because they were immersed in a civil war. So probably the guess of his mindset is he's not interested in having that happen to Korea. Right? Gotcha. It's like civil war is bad. So he went to China, actually, after that, where he served as a propagandist during the Northern Expedition and met Sun Yat-sen and Mao, Chairman Mao. And he avoided Chiang Kai-shek completely in Shanghai in 1927 by just pretending to be a Westerner. So in 1929, Japanese agents captured him in Shanghai and took him to prison, and he served 3 years there for anti-Japanese activity. And when he was released, he became the editor of a paper basically called the Central Daily. So like other prominent Koreans, he was pressured to collaborate in the Japanese war effort, but he resisted. And he said at one point to the Japanese, "I have fought you to death, so there's nothing left for you to do but kill me." Mm-hmm. Now, this guy's beliefs were an interesting mixture that I think really captures what's going on in Korea at this time. He's a Christian. He also likes Wilsonian democracy, and he likes socialism. He was always willing to work with the left, but he never actually joined a communist party himself because he said he could not subscribe to the materialist view of history. But he is still in charge, in Seoul of all of the People's Committees going on there.
So I like this guy. This guy's cool.
So even the people who aren't outright communists are still working with the communist government bodies. They're still working with the people. They're not anti-communist. Even the people who aren't diehard communists do not hate communists at this time. So, he was known for having very good looks, very attractive, and being a very good public speaker. So Americans actually kind of liked him. They wrote of him. They're like, oh, he's impressive. So this historian of the occupation, Albert Keep, once wrote, "What an amazing Korean he was. Gray fedora, gray tweed overcoat, gray flannel trousers, well-tailored tweed coat, blue shirt with a clean collar, neatly tied four in hand, looking for all the world as though he were off for a date at the Greenwich Country Club."
They're really fixated on this guy's suit here.
They love his outfit.
They're like,
hey, this guy's sharp dresser in the American sense, or the Westerners.
He looks like a Brooks Brothers model.
Yes.
Yes. That's all they care about. They're like, hot guy, good suit.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
He's impressive to the Westerners, but he immediately becomes trouble for them because he's like, we cannot let this North-South divide happen. So he really takes the helm and trying to push back against this. And in August 1945, the same month it's introduced, he is getting beaten by authorities or former authorities or American forces who are about to arrive, a couple days later.
Okay, this is metaphorically beaten.
No, he's literally physically beaten in August 1945, and his process keeps going on.
What the fuck happens? Go back.
Basically,
how does the beating start?
Well, he is just seen as this agent of trouble. So we don't know who started doing this, but basically all of the Americans and the remaining Japanese forces there are this guy's a problem. So this is when it starts, and we're going to see this is going to be something that follows him, and eventually he's assassinated for trying to divide this.
So he's like he's in the street and people are just hitting him with shit?
Yeah, no, he's literally dragged by oppositional forces and beaten, not by average Korean people.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly who did it, but we assume that they're agents on behalf of the Americans.
So the Americans, hypothetically...
So this is a few days before the Americans get there.
But yeah, so
it wouldn't be the American forces themselves.
No. But the Americans make a phone call, hypothetically,
to some of the Japanese administrators who are still there.
And they're like,
this guy's trouble. Get rid of him.
Protect the suit.
We like the suit. Just go for the face.
Yeah.
Yes. So right away, though, the point of the story is to illustrate right away there are activists who aren't even communists who are like, absolutely no to this North-South divide. And we see how they're handled.
Yeah.
They're beaten publicly.
Mm-hmm.
So the USSR's part in this whole division is pretty limited. Cummings says from August 1945 until January 1946, the Soviets worked with a coalition of communists and nationalists led by a Christian educator named Cho Man-sik. They did not set up a central administration, nor did they create an army. In retrospect, their policy seems more tentative and reactive than American policy in the South, which did move forward with plans for a separate administration and an army in the South. So while the Americans are like, we're taking over, we're doing our shit, we're building an army, fuck you, fuck this, fuck that. The USSR is like, we're not super active and involved. And if you remember in the Susie Kim book, she writes, if you came here looking for details about what the USSR was doing in North Korea, I'm so sorry this is not the book for you because they just weren't really there.
Okay, set aside ideology for a moment.
Yes.
Do you think the Soviet Union, just pragmatically, should have just been like, actually, fuck it, I guess you guys are doing this, I guess we're doing this, here we fucking are, and like gone whole hog on to it?
Okay, I think...
Set aside ideology.
No, and here's the reason why. I think it's because if the USSR had showed up and started directing things, based on everything the Korean people had gone through, they would have just viewed them as another foreign occupier. Mm-hmm. The fact that the U.S. Here's the thing, too, about communists in general, which I will say. Communists try to avoid civil war and conflict if it's unnecessary. Why? Because they want to be putting as many of their resources into increasing productive forces, into literacy campaigns, and all the shit they have to do. Wars to a communist are a distraction. They will defend themselves in their revolution, obviously, but they're not going to go out trying to start new wars. So what it reminds me of is when the communists won a civil war in China and they show up in Tibet. Mm-hmm. And everyone's like, you're going to kill your Dalai Lama, you're going to kill your Dalai Lama. And they're like, we're not going to fucking kill your Dalai Lama. He might be annoying as hell, but that would just create a civil war, a new one, and we don't want to do that. It's just not practical.
It's not practical. It does feel like if, I will say, the Soviet Union failed. Historically. It
was dismantled, yes.
It like...
failed to defend its revolution over time.
It was a failure in the long run. It did fabulous things. It did fail.
It doesn't exist anymore.
It does not
China still exists.
China still exists. It does seem like had the Soviet Union, like, and there are so many instances where the Soviet Union is like, I guess we'll like send like some of like the people who are sort of like in our vibe, like some guns or whatever. And it's like, no, you send them so much shit. It's like crazy. Like that you are Daddy Warbucks. Like that seems like the vibe.
I don't know.
I know
opposite. I feel like they should have been more hands off. Look at China's still here. Why? Because China minds its fucking business.
No, I know that, but like,
you think they should have done more gun ho?
No, I don't think they should have been there. I think they should have been Daddy Warbucks.
Okay, and just like more guns, more.
And like more,
they have a lot. They just got through World War II.
And like food, and like just like industry stuff. Like they were in the process of industrializing. Yes.
Remember, for a certain point in time, North Korea was doing way better than the South.
True.
Leading up to the war, and then for a period of time after they had rebuilt from the war.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they really needed all of that.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah. So what we see is that the People's Committees in the North were kind of aided by the Soviet occupation a little bit because there were administrations in this occupation zone that the Soviets actually used as institutions that were set up by Koreans. So the Soviets were there and they were like, we have this like administrative process just from like showing up to do a war. We're here a little bit. And the Koreans were like, thanks, we'll take the ball and we'll run with it. Mm-hmm. But it's not really like the USSR was super hands-on. They weren't in the weeds. And they also didn't need to be. They weren't that interested in it. They weren't that committed to this whole thing from the jump.
Yeah, no, I guess like if you want to prevent like the 38th parallel from becoming hardened,
yes.
Right? Like it's like you do kind of have to like
be hands off.
No, it's like get in there.
You
like,
can get in there.
Well, because it's like it has been hardened.
Oh,
like right. Like I think like we know this. We
know that it's now two countries. Even North Korea now is like, unfortunately, they're an enemy. That's not our country.
And so it's like, I guess if you want to prevent that, it's like maybe like.
Okay.
Daddy Warbucks it a little bit.
They just should have been prepared for another war and been like, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little.
Like, I think like there is a little bit of naivety and like Stalin being like, we're allies. Like, we'll like,
I could see that. Yeah, I definitely can see that. So through information culled from the press and informants, we see American intelligence reports said that when Soviets entered North Korea in late August 1945, they found that after the surrender of ethnic slur for Japanese people, Koreans had formed local self-rule councils in many places. So this is what everyone knows. They formed the People's Committees. A council of 27 members was formed in each of the 5 northern provinces. And in the south, northern committees were formed through village assemblies or at the initiative of village leaders. And rather than seeing them as threats like the Americans did, the Soviets just supported them and fostered them, the People's Committees. The Soviets were like, cool, you did it.
Hell yeah.
Good job, guys. Do more. Let us know if you need help. And these became the structures to build the government that would follow, that had popular support and was, friendly to the Soviet Union. So all of the political figures there who were left-leaning, the Soviet Union was like, we'll back you, but they weren't really there. So Soviet influence was there a little bit, obviously, because the people in Korea were sometimes described as being more Catholic than the Pope when it came to communism and
like they were super communists.
The communists in Korea were so communist that they would go to the Soviet Union sometimes and be like, okay, so we studied this that you did extensively, and we think we found a way to expand upon this one point you did and actually build it here. And the USSR was like,
God, that's so annoying.
Whoa, yeah, so they were like a little bit like, all right, man, cool, good luck, let us know if you need help. But they really were looking to them. Remember, since they had their revolution is when Korea started looking to the revolution in Russia going, there's hope for us. We could do this. So they'd been studying, sometimes underground, but for years and years and decades, what had been going on in the USSR.
Wait, I'm sorry. You set it up as a punchline, or for a punchline. The Koreans were so communist. How communist were they, Madeline?
I don't have a punchline. They just were like really communist, like a lot.
You are like the queen of improv here. You yes-anded me.
I'm into a corner. I don't even know. Just really a lot. Like they would know not to call him Joseph Stalin. That's for sure. They knew what was going on. So the primary Soviet objective was never to occupy Korea. It was literally just as long as we could set up a buffer against Japan, and get back our part of territory that had been lost after the Russo-Japanese War of 1905, we're happy. We don't whatever you guys got going on, great. It's cool, you're communists. Call us if you need anything. We'll be there. But if you're not calling, we're not there.
This is, they really are like the Tracy Flick of communism.
Oh, is that Election?
Election.
Yeah, great movie. Excellent movie. They really are. Yeah, Korea is the Tracy Flick of communism. Yes. So September 1st rolls around. And this is when Japan is officially supposed to hand over control to the United States. So it's been 2 weeks of all of this happening. And an advance party of the U.S. 24th Corps, remember, arrive in Seoul. So this is an advance party who shows up by plane, though. So remember, the rest are coming with all the boats. They're a little slower. So an advance party shows up by plane. And
listeners, excuse me, Madeline, I'm sorry to interrupt. Madeline, you cannot see what Madeline just did.
What?
But it was hilarious.
What was it?
They're coming by boats, and she made a hiking. Because that's what boats famously do. They swing their arms back and forth,
and then they push them in the ocean to move them forward.
I'm so sorry. I interrupted you, but I could not let that slide.
That's how a boat moves.
That is how a boat.
So they immediately get comfortable. And Cher has a quote about this and says, no sooner had the group arrived than it took over a suite of rooms in the Chosun Hotel in Seoul, the largest and plushest hotel in Korea, and threw a big party for the ranking Japanese military and government officials.
Oh, that rocks so hard.
Yes.
I love America so much.
So we're like, sorry we beat you in the war, haha, come party with us, fuck Korea, is basically what happens. So Koreans who approached the Americans to be like, hey, we see you're here. We would like to talk about our plight or whatever. We're, according to this text, summarily shown the door with a minimum of courtesy.
I mean, they don't know how to party. They're Tracy Flick.
Yeah. So the affair turned into, according to Cher, a glorious drunken brawl with the Japanese, which lasted for several days. So they just go on a binge.
Hell yeah.
They get there and they're binge partying with.
I love America.
I mean, it's just
I feel so patriotic.
It's because we were just in Newport for the 4th of July.
Yeah,
around so many Republicans. You saw so many American flags. It's really gotten to you.
I think we show up. We're administrate what? we're gonna get wasted, bro.
With the enemy.
With the enemy.
Like, because we're not actually enemies. And we know it. We know who the real enemies are. These filthy communists.
I just find that, like, can-do party hard attitude really inspiring.
It was very Andrew WK.
Yeah.
When it was time to party, they would party hard. So on September 2nd, 1945, Japan officially surrenders. The division of Korea is made official. And Bruce Cummings writes, there is no historical justification, though, for Korea's division. If any East Asian country should have been divided, it was Japan, like Germany, an aggressor. Instead, Korea, China, and Vietnam were all divided in the aftermath of World War II. There was no internal pretext for dividing Korea either. The 38th parallel was a line never noticed by the people of, say, Kaesong, the Koryo capital, which the parallel cut in half. And then it became the only line that mattered to Koreans, a boundary to be removed by any means necessary. And the Korean government that was born out of the Committee for the Preparation for Korean Independence existed, within a few weeks of Japan's surrenders. Remember, it had been headquartered in Seoul. So they're going to run into major conflict with the Americans now, who show up to take over. 3 days after this, September 5th, this is when the USA's 24th Corps anchors off the coast of Okinawa during a near typhoon while they are still heading towards Incheon. And September 6th, the new Korean government's name was changed to the Korean People's Republic. Now, this same day, an OSS team, the precursors to the CIA, right, of 12 Americans and 5 Koreans is flown into Korea, including Lee Bum-suk, who would be the future premier under Syngman Rhee in South Korea. They also distributed leaflets to the Korean people. And their leaflets said to the Koreans, be obedient to orders passed to you through the current Korean government. Do not participate in demonstrations against the Japanese or in welcome to American armed forces. Go about your normal pursuits. Meanwhile, the new Korean government made up of Koreans was becoming anchored in these widespread people's committees all throughout the countryside in particular. And Susie Kim talked about this. We read this quote last week, but we're going to read it again to kind of bookend this for us, this kind of period. Peasants' unions throughout Korea served as a prelude to the People's Committees, as those who had been active in the unions were often elected to head the People's Committees. As Japanese troops retreated to their barracks and colonial officials nervously awaited the occupation forces, villagers banded together to preserve peace and organize local self-governing committees throughout the country. By the end of 1945, the entire peninsula was covered with People's Committees at all levels down to the villages. Now remember, this is September. So even though the Americans show up, the Korean people are like, mm-mm.
Well, I mean, so the advanced party has shown up. Like, as like the whole fucking fleet is the whole.
Well, they're anchoring. They're anchored off the coast. They're getting there now. But this doesn't stop for the next 3 months. At least we know the People's Committees are still getting formed. So the Korean people are like, this is not going to last long. We have our own government. It's in place. Fuck these people. How long could this last?
So is this like naivety or like just like hopefulness and like dig in? We've got like
a fight ahead of us.
Yeah.
They're ready to fight.
Okay.
So she says the People's Committees were spontaneously organized to carry out revolutionary justice. They set up people's courts to punish those who had collaborated with the Japanese as national traitors. They took over local government offices to distribute land and preserve local security. They showed enormous capacity for organization. Most of them had sections for propaganda, peacekeeping, security, food, finances, welfare relief, consumer affairs, labor relations, tenancy rates, amongst others. This is just in a couple of days. An American official in Korea at the time observed that all colonial government agencies became powerless, and that People's Committees preserved the peace and collected necessary taxes, as well as preventing looting, bloodshed, and rioting. People's Committees were supplemented by peasants' unions, worker unions, peacekeeping groups, and organizations of students, youth, and women. And I want to expand upon this just to really understand that this was a force that was still present all throughout Korea in the North and the South, and to really understand that in the North, they were basically made into the government. They just became the government. In the South, what we will see is this launches 5 years of the United States trying to slaughter and eradicate them everywhere.
Yes.
But you really have to understand what they are, because it will be, the People's Committees really are the foundation for our entire understanding of the Korean Peninsula for the next 5 years. So People's Committees announced a whole range of socioeconomic programs because the Koreans hoped that the end of Japanese rule would mark a new era in Korean history, a general social liberation, and that a revolution would follow. Thousands of political prisoners were released, obviously. They, along with other political figures who had organized and led the struggle against the Japanese, actively involved themselves in the activities of the People's Committees. The People's Committees also functioned as de facto politico-administrative organs, like we said, pending the formal and complete transfer of power and surrender of Japanese forces. So on September 6, 1945, the CPKI called a meeting of the National Assembly in Seoul, in which approximately 1,000 delegates representing a wide variety of groups and professions throughout the country participated. This assembly proclaimed the establishment of the Korean People's Republic. The Soviet forces, which had successfully engaged the Japanese forces in Korea, recognized the People's Committees in the area north of the 38th parallel and turned over administrative authority to them in on August 25th. Thus, in August through September of 1945, the Korean people established a broad national de facto administration which had effective control over the whole peninsula. So even though the Americans are like, hey, there's this line here, we're divided, they're like, no, fuck you. We're one country, and this is our one country's government.
Yeah.
So, Woo-Suk Kwon, who is a researcher who specializes in the island of Jeju in South Korea, which we will discuss at length shortly after this, mirrors the same understanding in her research of the local governments going on, specifically in this one island in South Korea. She says, immediately following the Japanese surrender in August 1945, local political activists attempt to form their own People's Republic on the basis of the People's Committees on Jeju Island. A number of scholars and sources indicate this was the dominant political group on the island from 1945 to 1948, still in the South. So even as the Americans show up, the people in the South are extremely resistant. They're still putting their faith in the People's Committees, and they're using them to fight back against the Americans.
Now, if I recall correctly from the Susie Kim book, there is like this like huge group of sort of like hella Catholic people in Korea. Am I correct here?
There's some, yeah.
And so it does seem like in the periods Kim is covering, there's like a little bit of like reorientation of people around where it's like, well, the Catholics are gonna have to go elsewhere as like the division hardens.
You know, I don't remember that in particular. I know we wrote that book together, but it doesn't really stand out to me.
I mean, I just remember because it's like, right, you know, I know it's like we're emphasizing the like ascendancy or popularity of the communists, but it's like there were people who were like, actually, we're like really Christian, and that's our vibe.
Some Christians did work with them, but some people, you know, obviously there were people who were not interested in all of this.
Yeah.
Few and far between. They did exist, for sure. So if a group of them was Catholic, I did.
Yeah, no, I think I remember that very. We can go back all the way.
That's fine. So according to Cummings, which is referenced, Woo-Suk Kwon, these Cumin, they all reference each other. It's important to know. These are like the preeminent researchers on Korea during this time period. The Jeju PC, the People's Committee, which first emerged in August 1945, effectively exerted its political influence on the islanders until early 1948. So even though the Americans are showing up, you have to remember there's still this other force that considers itself the national government of Korea fighting back against a second occupation. So Grant Mead, a U.S. military government officer, in 1945, wrote in his book, the Jeju's People's Committee was the only political party in the island and the only organization acting like a government. The available evidence strongly suggests that this organization was autonomous outside of communist influence, or rather autonomous of outside communist influence. So it's not like the USSR was controlling it, is basically what she's saying. So they were
So this is like the specific Jeju Island.
So she focuses on Jeju Island. So this is kind of like a zoomed in view.
No, I guess what I'm asking is she indicating like outside of Korean influence?
No. Okay. She's saying that they're not like, she's like, look, we know in terms of like the USSR was pulling the strings and making puppet governments.
Gotcha.
She's like, we know in Jeju they certainly weren't.
It's the same point Kim makes. Yeah.
Yes, but so all of these researchers are saying this is not just like one French researcher. Everybody pretty much is confirming that this is true. John Hodge, the commander of the U.S. occupying forces, reported to the American Congress in October 1947 that Jeju was a truly communal area that is peacefully controlled by the People's Committee without much Comintern influence. The survivors of Jeju, which later would be a genocide that we'll talk about, likewise said the Jeju People's Committee was a grassroots, autonomous, and effective administration for local people. So, Beta Hyun-jin Kim says, immediately after Japan's surrender to the U.S. on August 15th, Korean anti-colonial movements quickly mobilized, established these people's committees, they became the governing bodies, and they proliferated to 2,244 branches across the Korean peninsula in total. The people's committees proclaimed the Korean People's Republic, a day before the U.S. entry, and the Soviets immediately embraced it, seeing that the Korean people had overwhelmingly communist leanings, knowing this could be, okay, cool, you're going to be a communist ally. And the Americans, this was going to be, as I mentioned, setting this up, this was going to be the greatest difference in what would happen in the North and what would happen in the South, because the Americans' main goal would be wiping them out completely. So September 7th, we don't see much movement, but on September 8th is when the American occupying forces under General Hodge officially reach Korea. Mm-hmm. So this is the rest of the boats. Everybody shows up, right? So they've been coming. There was the advance parties on the way. They've been anchored off the shore. Now they're in. Mm-hmm. They're in Korea. They show up, and they officially are marking the beginning of something called the USA MGIK. Do you know what this is?
No.
What this is? This is the USA military government in Korea.
Okay.
So this is, boom, hey, what's up? We're creating a military dictatorship now.
Got it. So before it was like, no, we're just going to we're going to administrate their independence. Now they're just like, absolutely not.
Well, this is how we were going to administer their independence. So there was no shift in ideology or anything, no shift in messaging. But the way that the Americans showed up and sought to do this was, you're all under a military dictatorship and you're going to do whatever the fuck we want.
I mean, I will say that must be that is at the very least talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Yes. This is what they're doing.
Right. Like, more realistically, that must have been absolute fucking whiplash for Koreans.
Yes. Well, the Koreans people committees, though, did not trust the Americans from the jump.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But to be because that's the we're celebrating, yes. We're having it everyone's getting out of jail.
They got,
oh my
2
God.
weeks of this.
Fuck yeah. And then it's actually the hammer's going to come down.
Yes, they got 2 weeks of this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe three. They got a couple weeks of this, and that was it. So that couple weeks, though, really did solidify what would be lasting beyond that. It is shocking it did last. So as a pretty good indicator of how things would go for the next few decades in Korea, when Korean people marched to the waterfront to greet the landing Americans coming in from the sea, Japanese police opened fire on the crowd, killing 2 and wounding 10, and they had done so with the authority of the new U.S. command.
Mm-hmm. This is what I was saying, where it's well, okay, the Japanese are kind of helping administer the handover.
Yeah. So, Cummings says American troops disembarked while black-coated Japanese police on horseback held Korean crowds at bay. The total number of American troops and, quote, civil service teams approached 25,000 people within a few weeks. America's black ships had arrived. So this is oh, whoa. This is very, very foreboding doom vibes. Japanese forces responded kindly to the Americans, but not to the Soviets in the North. In the North, the Japanese forces sabotaged mines and sabotaged factories. In the South, the people from the North had retreated to the American zone to accept surrender. The Soviets had a tendency to kill the fascists on sight, and they knew that. In the South, already existing Japanese forces preserved the state of things in anticipation of the Americans' arrival. So the Americans walked in, so things set up, nice, clean, orderly. In the North, the Soviets were like, oh shit, everything's getting exploded. You guys are crazy people. What are you doing? But they weren't actually doing this in a way that would harm the Soviets, because the Soviets weren't administering the government.
It was just harm Koreans.
Yes, exactly. So the Japanese commander in Seoul radioed General Hodge, warning about local communists seeking to undermine them throughout all of Korea. And Hodge cabled back and was like, here's what you need to do to keep your troops armed. And the Japanese commander replied that he was extremely grateful to have received your understanding reply. So the Japanese and American forces are working together day one. The Americans just began taking over the colonial institutions of the Japanese that had already existed in a friendly handover in the South. General Hodge moves into the Japanese Governor General's mansion. Remember the guy that they were assassinating and trying to kill?
Oh, yeah.
And General Hodge just shows up and moves in. He's I'm here now. And so this is really symbolic to the Korean people. They're like, you're the same.
Yeah.
You are literally the same.
This is the thing. I don't love this as much as I love the hard partying.
Right.
My thing is, Americans really have to stick to what they're good at, which is being kind of drunk idiots.
Yes.
I think that is...
Our skill set, our talent, yeah.
And it's if they just showed up and just been, wasted for a few weeks and then been bye, guys.
This all could have been avoided.
Yeah.
But no. And so Korean people at the time describe, there used to be a policeman who stood on our corner. He used to be Japanese. He wore this colored hat. And then just one day he was replaced with an American wearing a different colored hat. But it was the same policeman.
Yeah.
So Hodge creates an advisory council similar to the Central Advisory Council that had been created during Japanese rule. And he staffs it with well-known Korean collaborators from the Japanese imperial era. So the Department of Education, for example, was headed by Yoo Uk-kyo, who told young Koreans to, quote, die for the fatherland of Japan during the war. So that's part of the new government in the South. The Korean Electric Company gets headed by Do Kyu-sun, former president of the women's kindergarten and also normal school during the Japanese occupation, where he regularly reported anti-Japanese activities to the secret police. So all of the people who had supported the Japanese are now in positions of power under the Americans.
I mean, again, this is the playbook literally everywhere.
Literally everywhere. So Hodge discovered on his arrival, oh my God, the country's run by these people's committees. They're carrying out all the functions of the government. They took over operating former Japanese enterprises on a cooperative basis for the benefit of the employees. And rather than use them, right, because these were the indigenous Korean people's political, economic, administrative origins, he is like, we need to resurrect the Japanese administrative structure immediately. And to do so, we are going to use the police for about a month because the Japanese government general had stopped functioning. So in the northern zone, in contrast, the Soviet occupation force cooperated with the popular movement and they left the civil administration to the people's committees. So the Americans, like I said, really just were like, we got to destroy the people's committees. This was their main goal. Bruce Cummings says, had the Americans and the Russians quit Korea, a leftist regime would have taken over quickly. And it would have been a revolutionary nationalist government that over time would have moderated and rejoined the world community, as did China and Vietnam doing today. He says nationalist, I think, communist.
I mean, it does, well, you've described, and we described somewhat famously, this was not Mao and Chiang Kai-shek, this was a different thing.
Yes, this was a different thing. So these were leftists, communists, a whole lot of them. Richard Robinson, the chief of the public opinion section of the Department of Information of the USAMGIK, the U.S. military government of Korea, later a historian who would write to intelligence headquarters of the 24th Marine Corps 24th Corps Army Corps. It was safe to say, for the most part, the local people's committees in the early days were of genuine grassroots democratic variety and represented a spontaneous urge of the people to govern themselves. They resented orders from the military government to turn the administration of local government over to American Army officers and their appointed Korean counterparts, many of whom were considered to be Japanese collaborators. It seemed like a reversion to what had been flipped. As what had gone before. Bloodshed ensued in many communities as local people's committees defied the military government and refused to abandon government offices. Koreans and Americans met in pitched battles, and not a few Koreans met violent death in struggle. For instance, there was a case of Naoman, a small community in North Cholla province. The Japanese had turned over considerable property to the local people's committee just prior to the arrival of the Americans. The military government demanded the property, but the People's Committee refused to renounce title, whereupon 5 leaders of the committee were arrested by the local Korean police. Shortly after, the police chief was captured and beaten by committee members and the police station attacked by a large crowd of irate citizens. The station was guarded by American troops. When the Koreans refused to disband, the Americans advanced with fixed bayonets. 2 Koreans were killed and several injured. This incident was typical of many such cases. Louise Strong, in her report for the CIA, which is kind of infamous when learning about Korea, wrote, when the Americans landed in Korea, the Koreans had already had a de facto government, a People's Republic that had been declared a date earlier by a Congress of Koreans themselves. General John R. Hodge, commander of the U.S. Armed Forces, dissolved this People's Republic and drove most of its members underground. So what we learn is that even though it was dissolved on paper, these people are still operating, sometimes in open defiance, right? Just like, no, fuck you, we're staying. Sometimes they'd be like, okay, fine, we're dissolved, but then they just move underground to destroying things. And so by September 15th, Cecil W. Nist, head of the 24th Corps Intelligence, along with other officers, had conversations with Koreans and interviewed them at the Bando Hotel. Now, this hotel the Americans were staying at had also been the hotel that the Japanese people in Korea had stayed at when they've come. So this just really the symbolism of this is like, get the fuck out, foreign invader. Korean people. So they tried to figure out who would be suited to be the new puppet government of South Korea under the U.S. military's watch. And this decision about Korean leadership under the occupation were then sent in a report to H. Merrill Benninghoff, State Department political advisor to General Hodge, and then sent back to Washington. And his report said, Southern Korea can best be described as a powder keg ready to explode at the application of a spark. There is great disappointment that immediate independence and sweeping out of the Japanese did not eventuate. The Koreans who achieved high rank under the Japanese are considered pro-Japanese and are hated almost as much as their masters. All groups seem to have the common idea of seizing Japanese property, ejecting the Japanese from Korea, and achieving immediate independence. Beyond this, they have few ideas. This is all they want, right? Korea is completely ripe for agitators. The most encouraging single factor in the political situation is the presence of several hundred conservatives among the older and better educated Koreans. Although many of them have served the Japanese, that stigma ought eventually to disappear. Such persons favor the return of the provisional government, and although they may not constitute a majority, they are probably the largest single group. So he's like, all these fucking Koreans are crazy communists. They want to light everything on fire. I got a handful of dudes who are super right-wing, who were totally chill with working with the Japanese government, and they're going to work with us too, probably. That's our best bet. And this is exactly what happened. So up to September 16th, something called the KDP, the Korean Democratic Party, gets formed. The conservatives mentioned in these several hundred lines, all right, included people like Kim Song-soo, his brother Yeon-soo, Song Chin-yu, Cho Pyong-ok, Yeon Po-sung, Chang Taek-sun. These people end up being super, super important in this history of the development of the far-right extremists in South Korea. And as was mentioned, they're the minority. There's not very many of them, but the Americans handpick them to work with them. So the Americans are basically like, let's get some proto-fascist hard right-wingers in the government there to help kick these communist asses. So it's basically a meeting that takes place, and they all initiate the foundation of this new political party called the Korean Democratic Party, the KDP. Some of them have been actually exiled for their politics being too right-wing. And some were just like pretty mainstay domestic conservatives, but they were super, super right-wing at the time. And Scheer says, it was no secret that the military government favored the right and was anxious for the parties of the right to acquire strong popular support. It promoted exile groups without any popular support, like the rightist Korean Provisional Government led by Kim Koo. Breaking his pledge to only return as a private citizen after he had exiled himself, Kim modestly announced, when I return, the government of Korea returns. A provisional government complete with a cabinet was proclaimed with support from the American command, based out of all these hardcore...
Okay, so if like a weird political exile with some crazy beliefs is invited back into the country on the promise that they're just going to be a private citizen, I think the answer is don't believe.
Yeah, no, they were gonna come set up a new government movement. There's gonna be torches involved.
Like, yeah, this is like, oh, like you went away for a while, but you can come back, like, and just like what, become a postman.
Yeah, no, it's not gonna happen, and this is exactly what occurs. So, it's headquarters of this new provisional government that was set up are established at Doksu Palace. And this description says they're ringed by armed Korean guards despite the general confiscation of weapons by the American command. The day after Kim's arrival, he's introduced to the local press in the throne room of the capital by the military governor himself. Americans then went on to print a lengthy address and a portrait of Kim in the December 8th edition of the Chukkan Digest, the official publication of the military government. Although Kim made references to my cabinet members, the military government contradictorily, as a further measure to discredit the leftist Korean People's Republic, banned the use of the word republic, saying that the military government was the sole government. So basically, just to sum this up, you got a bunch of communists running around. You have the American military there. You got them getting a hold of like 20 super right-wing freaky fascist guys that nobody likes. And they're like, we need to make this the legitimate government of Korea. They have no popular support and everyone hates them. Mm-hmm. So this is what they set to work to do in order to destroy the People's Committees, while also actually literally attacking violently the People's Committees.
Was there any attempt to do like a propaganda campaign? Like,
this is the propaganda.
Oh, okay. Like they're gonna we're gonna put you in the Brooks Brothers suit.
Yes.
Gotcha.
This is what they do. They're running the papers. This is what they do when they try to create this movement out of thin air. It's propaganda, coupled with forcefully repressing any of the opposition, which everybody was opposition. Mm-hmm. Nobody fucking liked these guys. So this was supposed to be like the Liberal Democratic Party of Korea, a ruling conservative party, the same that we would see later emerge in other countries, right? The problem, though, as Cummings explains, is this. Korean society had no base for either a liberal or a democratic party as Americans understood it. It had a population, the vast majority of which consisted of poor peasants, and a tiny minority of which held most of the wealth, landowners, who formed the base of this KDP, this new right-wing party. So you can't create American-style liberal capitalism in a place where you literally have like 12 rich dudes and everyone fucking hates them and everybody else is a poor farmer.
Yeah, I mean, like that doesn't, right. This makes me sad for them because it's like, well, if you knew the history of liberalism, it's like you got to get some cafes, you got to like.
You need to create a middle class.
You need to create a middle class. You need to have places where people just like hang out and talk about shit in the public.
Yeah.
This is like you do have to do all of the like
That's when the middle class is there, so you can maintain power by getting these people on your side.
You build, like, yeah, it's like you have to build the infrastructure of liberalism if you want to do liberalism.
Exactly. So remember also, by 1945, there was that whole class of Korean people, the Yangban, the capitalist class. They were widely viewed as treacherous collaborators with the Japanese, and strong demands had come about for them to share their land with the tenants and do land reform. And, the Korean elite at this time during the colonial period were perceived by the regular people as having benefited immensely under colonial rule while everybody else suffered. Well, this new party, the new party they were trying to make, the KBP, it was all the Yangban. So not only are people not into it and they're not popular, they're like, you need to give us your land. Mm-hmm. Like, fuck you. Like, literally, what the fuck? Like, you worked with all these people who tortured us to death. And historical documentation said that, this didn't matter. The United States intervened on behalf of the smallest minority group in Korea. NIST had said the largest single group. No, that is inaccurate. And all evidence showed that this was really a group of like a handful of super fucking rich dudes, and everyone did hate them. So even NIST writing, well, they're a large minority group, that turns out to be bullshit.
Could they not, like, it seems like the obvious thing to do would be to, like, find a few like poor guys who you're like, look, man, we are going to set you up so fucking good. Like, this seems like you guys, they are just bad at this, because it's like, find a few poor guys, find a few like communists or like People's Committee guys,
and bribe them,
and just be like, you're our guy now. I'm so like,
we go in guns a-blazing, kill the opposition, make friends with the rich guys that everybody hates.
Yeah,
it's gonna go fine.
That seems
not like a great plan. So the Korean people are resistant to the American occupation in the South, very fucking obviously. Like, of course, the people who were killing themselves rather than be occupied by Japan. So American government, at this time is operating this full military government from 1945 to 1948. The United States took over the Japanese imperial mechanisms. And in 1884, the Japanese army, this is back in the day. The Japanese army had established a main base at Yongsan, which is in the outskirts of Seoul. Not only did the American military government just take it over and be like, this is our military base, it is still an American military base today.
I mean, that makes sense to me. Like, why build a new military base? They got one there.
And it's still the United States. Yeah. So Koreans in the South are immediately fighting back against this. And the United States is trying to brand them as being radical pro-Soviets rather than just Korean people who want independence. And their independence happens to be, probably communist. The United States saw the People's Republic as part of a Soviet master plan to dominate all of Korea. And this is the propaganda they put out. And today, people... your average person thinks that there was a Soviet plan to dominate the North and that there were no communists that existed in the South whatsoever. So the story shifted a little bit, but it's the same type of propaganda. And Cummings raised their radical activities such as the ousting of landlords, attacks on Koreans and the colonial police, were usually matters of settling scores left over from the colonial period or of demands by Koreans to run their own affairs. But it immediately became wrapped up with this Soviet-American rivalry, such that the Cold War arrived in Korea in the last months of 1945. So September 19th, the guerrillas from Manchuria come home. And this is a tie-in to what we were talking about in our Kim Il-sung bonus episode. And just before the Manchurian guerrillas returned to Korea, the top leaders, including Kim Il-sung and a few others, agreed among themselves that Kim Il-sung would be considered the primary figure for the resistance because he had a great reputation, and they also said he was a huge personal force. Remember, for the activities described in the bonus episode. By the time this group of guerrilla fighters come back, they're all in on Kim Il-sung. They're like, this guy's the man. He's the one. And which is interesting because he wasn't the highest ranked. Other people outranked him, like this guy named Kim Chaek and Cho Hyun had a higher rank than Kim Il-sung in the Chinese communist hierarchy that they'd been a part of. But it didn't matter. Even they were like, Kim Il-sung's the guy. So when they made their way back to Korea on September 19th, the whole group that came back with tales of victory and fighting against the Japanese is like, yes, we fought the Japanese. And guess who did the most? This guy, Kim Il-sung. And they walk into this situation going on in Korea. Right. And so think about what this is going to...
And I mean, and they're like aware, obviously, that this is going on when they get there.
They're hearing about what's going on and they're like, oh, we got to show up. So October comes around. It's been a month. Okay, so October.
I mean, this is this all kicks off in August, yes. So we got August, September. We have done 2 months.
A month and a half. 2 months.
I'm just going to say, we have done 2 months. I am actually really loving this in terms of the ways in which, like, just you, like, this episode that you have written, because, I complained at some point about, like, we seem to be just going year by year through all of human history.
Yeah.
And you were like, I hear you, David. I see your complaints. I see your concerns. We will now be going month by month through all of human history.
A lot happened. And I just feel like you have to have the psychological understanding of this period to
know
everything about Korean.
I am not being sarcastic.
Okay.
I am genuinely enjoying this story.
Are you?
I am loving this story.
Okay.
And feeling proud to be an American.
All right. Well, we got 20 minutes left in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, October 3rd, to facilitate the occupation of Northern Korea, Soviet authorities set up a civil administration, and they rely on completely Korean initiatives, right? The Soviets are like, we're going to take the people who are leftists, obviously. We're not going to help you guys set up some right-wing psycho landlords or anything, but it's going to be you. And 5 days later, the 5 Provinces Administrative Bureau is established. Now, this is 110 People's Committee representatives, 51 of whom are members of the Korean Communist Party. So not all of them, but a good number of them. Not even half, though. They were also joined by 39 representatives of workers, peasants, and intellectuals from other parties, and 20 Soviet personnel. Representatives from each of the provinces' parties meet in Pyongyang to form a central administration with 10 departments: industry, transportation, communication, agriculture, commerce, finance, education, health, justice, and security. The various regional administration organizations come to be uniformly called the People's Committees, right? And they take on a semblance of central authority. And the local committees still remain power and control over regional affairs. So This is how the Soviets make use of the People's Committees and establish kind of a governing force of Koreans mostly. 20 out of the 110 people involved were from
I mean, yeah, that's like not like... It's not nothing.
It's not nothing, but, you know, they're like, oh, it's 85% you guys.
Yeah.
It's 20% us, 85, or 15% us, 20, the 110 throwing me off.
You are actually very good at math. This is something I know to be true.
Yeah, I know.
I am the gibberish that came out of your mouth just now. It was no. Let me finish. I think if we go back and parse that, you will be correct.
I was way more than what's correct. Me too. Whatever. So, 2 days later in the South, by contrast, it was announced that the USAMGIK. Where's that, David? Do you remember?
Hold on. Let me look at the fucking thing. The US. Okay. I forgot about America.
Never forget.
Military government in Korea. There we go.
The military dictatorship in the South. So this is what's happening in the North, remember? And you're like, oh my God, we've got elections. We have representatives. People are coming together from your local people's committees. Yay, go off, Queens. We're starting a government.
Again, I do think, like, now we are apparently doing YouTube now as a thing.
Yes. Yeah, you can view all of our, well, there's no video, but you can
I think we may need, I will not be in it. We will fake, but because Madeline doing maracas motion, and I'm like, you guys are really missing out.
Well, I'm a very animated speaker. So meanwhile, in the South, on the flip side, the United States is like, the only government you have is the foreign occupying military. Bow down, people of Korea, to the foreign occupying military.
You are overselling it. And your landlords.
The only government in Korea, south of the 38th parallel, is the United States military.
Everyone loves 2 things: cops, specifically military cops.
Yeah, they love
specifically American military cops, and another country, and landlords.
And their landlords.
That is like, they are really setting themselves up for success.
Good news.
They are.
An occupying army has befriended your landlord. Do not resist.
That's like, again, proud to be an American.
Proud to be American. So General Hodge tells a UN commission that in September 1945, we came in and found communists actually ruling and controlling South Korea. So on October 14th, if we're imagining ourselves to be the people of Korea, we officially meet Kim Il-sung.
Okay.
He shows up. He's introduced to the Korean people in the northern half of the country, and his story is told. People are like, he was a hero of the resistance against Japan and Manchuria. Again, listen to our episode on him to learn more about what happened there.
Did we not describe him as Robin Hood? So presumably, like, the people are like, we've heard so much about this guy. Holy fuck. Here he is.
Yes. And Soviet soldiers stood behind him to be like, yeah, we support this guy. He's the shit. And his old former, like, people who fought beside him, I don't know, like people,
his comrades,
but like they were like just it was like a military term. The people in his division, fellow fighters.
I was watching that horrible Alex Karp interview about Palantir today.
Yes. Okay.
Did you see this? Yeah, it's very funny. But he at one point, this is an aside, he's like, I don't do drugs, unlike Peter Thiel or something, and like he looks like the most coked out anyone has ever looked. I'm not saying he's doing cocaine. Bear in mind.
Yeah, you think maybe the lady doth protest too much.
But he continually refers to something called war fighters, and this is because and like this is this new terminology that seems to
soldier,
which is like
war fighter.
We have had the term soldiers, troops, and so on and so forth for centuries.
Yeah, no, I like that. I'm going to go with it. He's fellow war fighters.
Yes.
Yeah, Kim Il-sung's fellow war fighters and the Soviets that were there are like, he's the shit. You're going to love him. So, just as like a little recap summary for those of you who don't want to pay the $3 a month for the Patreon, he had begun an armed resistance on the border region of China and Korea shortly after Japan basically established a puppet government there in 1932, and he had survived this rugged guerrilla war that had killed a bunch of people, and he had emerged not only victorious, but as a really good leader and a true unifying fighter there. And he was only 33 years old by the time he came back to Korea. Now, a couple days later, not to be outdone, the South introduces their own guy that they think should be the leader of the Korean people. And it is Syngman Rhee.
Who had been hanging out with Truman in America while Kim Il-sung was fighting the Japanese.
Yep, exactly. So the Americans are like, hey, Korea, we heard you didn't love the U.S. military and your landlord being in charge of you.
What about this like, weird Catholic guy who like you've never met before?
Yes, they're like, we've got a new guy you're gonna love. His name is Syngman Rhee. He's not a communist, which is great. He was Western educated. He has this PhD from Princeton.
In what?
I actually don't know what his PhD is in. Do you?
No, my phone isn't the living.
That's okay. I'm gonna look it up. Actually, I don't know. What is Syngman Rhee's PhD in?
I really wanted to be something like art history.
Evil art history.
No, I want them to just feel like, we got this guy. He is Korean. So like
he's a random Korean. Political science.
Okay.
So he's a little relevant. Okay. And you know, he was friends with a bunch of fancy Washington and Wall Street people. You know, he had some anti-Japanese credentials enough. He had been like, you know, from outside of Korea. Stop, Japan. No.
That's
bad.
That's important. That is, hey, I will say, Fidel Castro from outside of Cuba.
Yes.
Stop.
But also,
but then he like went back.
Yeah. So no. So they're like, we found a guy. You're gonna love him. He's Korean, kind of. He
kind of. He is Korean.
Well, but he's also been living in the United States for like a long time.
That's like all of those expats in like Barcelona or whatever.
Exactly.
They're like not really American.
But I mean, not anymore. They chose to leave. So you're like, he's Korean mostly, and he said, no, Japan, you're gonna love it. He is us. He is us. Officially, he is like our guy. Because okay, he was in his 70s, and he had lived in the United States for 4 decades.
Okay,
most of his life in the United States.
So like literally most Koreans, like you
are like, who the fuck is this guy? They were like, what? His wife was from Austria. So there's random Austrian chicks there. They're like, what the fuck is going on? And he hated communism. So the Americans were like, okay, fine. just listen to this guy who hates communism instead of us who hates communism. What's the problem? So the North, they're getting this fucking 33-year-old sexy war hero who united all the people who fought the evils. And then in the South, they're getting this 70-year-old dude who has a PhD in poli-sci from Princeton and is married to an Austrian chick who has not lived there for 40 years. He has not lived in Korea longer than Kim Il-sung has been alive at this point.
Again, I do think, like, I don't understand why they did not just find a hot guy and bribe him.
I think nobody was into it. Everyone was like, fuck.
That is like, the Americans had so much fucking money, they could have done it. That in a country of that many people, there has to be one stooge.
One hot, sexy stooge who also hates communism.
No, they doesn't, like, we don't care about that. There are dumb people everywhere. Yeah. There are dumb people who are like, I literally do not give a shit about ideology. Like, this is not a thing I think about. I am one of those people.
You're saying they should have gone for a Manchurian candidate.
They should have gone for a Manchurian. Literally, the North had their own literal Manchurian candidate.
They really did, yeah. He was great. He was spectacular.
And, like, they should have, and it's just like, get a guy, make him hot.
Yes.
Preferably not 70.
Yes.
All respect to our septuagenarians.
Not an Austrian wife, ideally. You don't want to show up in Korea with the Austrian wife.
I don't know if
they had just gotten into a fight with a certain person of Austrian note.
Yes. Right. Like, probably a Korean wife or, like, no wife.
That's fine. Like a boy band. You don't want them to look like they're dating so all the girls can imagine they're with them.
Yes. And then it's like, again, there are in a whole country with like millions and millions of people, there are dumb hot guys abounding.
Yeah, I bet.
Right.
You really underestimate how few Koreans were not politically.
No, I understand that, but
you think there's like two? I mean, the U.S. government probably could find it. We've got the resources.
It is not like
you don't need a lot. You just need one.
You just need one guy and just feel like, look, man.
Do you want to make some money?
Do you want to make a lot of money?
I got a job for you.
It's so easy. We will write all your speeches. You have to do literally nothing but, like, wave at people and, like, say the words we tell you, like, once a week, and then just
an actor.
Chill out. Just get, like,
a well-paid actor. Well, right.
They got Sigmund Rhee and stuff.
They got Sigmund Rhee. They got the 70-year-old who hated communism, was only kind of Korean, was more not Korean than Korean based on timeline, and yeah, he's all a mess. So Cher writes about this and says, of all the political exiles, the most notorious was Sigmund Rhee, who was eventually to become president for 12 years. Rhee, a diplomatic butterfly of aristocratic lineage, has spent 40 years in exile, placing his hopes on the expectation that U.S. imperialism's inevitable interest in the Far East would carry him back to Korea. His day finally arrived. On October 16, 1945, he arrived in Seoul on General MacArthur's personal airplane. His quick passage from Washington had been arranged by Colonel Millard Preston Goodfellow. At MacArthur's suggestion, Hodge had reserved a 3-room suite at the Chosin Hotel for Rhee, and on October 20th presented Private Citizen Rhee at a welcoming rally as a returned national hero. At the rally, Rhee proceeded in his address to attack the Soviet occupation of the Northern Zone. So they really cemented it like, the Soviets are occupying the North.
Again, this is, I don't like, I think this is
a good strategy.
I am so patriotic, but I feel like we have really, like, dropped the ball here because it's like, no, always come in with, like, bread and roses, bread and circuses, or whatever. Yeah. Just be like, hey, guys, like, I don't really care about the Soviets. Like, look, man, we all are just trying to get along, but, like, if we got capitalism up in here, like really hardcore capitalism, think about all the cool shit.
He shouldn't have done the smear campaign.
I think he should have, like...
Stay positive.
I have told you in a very different context that, like, people want treats.
People want treats. That's true.
People want treats.
That's true. Well, Cher says it's no surprise that Rhee did this because he's proven himself over the years to be vehemently anti-communist. So this, of course he's going to take the opportunity. So on December 7th, 1942, the first anniversary of Pearl Harbor, he had marked the occasion by sending Secretary of State Cordell Hull a letter warning that unless the Provisional Republic of Korea was accorded diplomatic recognition, the result would inevitably be the creation of a communist state in Korea by the Russians. So this had been in the Americans' mind since 1942.
Mm-hmm.
Since 1942, they're like, we already got a guy, Sigmund Rhee. He's going to be the guy, when they were secretly plotting. So Ri had assisted the OSS in the recruitment of Koreans for covert operations in Korea in the past. That's how they knew him.
See, this is the thing. Why'd just get one of those guys?
Yeah, no, but they went with Ri. And remember, the OSS was the precursor to the CIA.
We're dum-dums.
Yeah, so M. Preston Goodfellow had been the OSS leadership supervising Ri. And he said that Ri was chosen specifically because he understood the American point of view way better than the other Koreans. Why? Because he'd lived in the United States for over half his life. So he was given special status immediately. He was given the special treatment, and these huge propaganda campaigns were started about him. Like, he's actually a national hero. If you think about it, he's actually your guy. He's your national hero. Now, the thing to know is that people in the South had heard about Kim Il-sung. He was a national hero to them, too.
Well, I mean, at this point, like, the division is still so new that they're still kind of all one country.
They're still all kind of, they got the Centralized People's Committee government overseeing all of Korea. They're all still communists, so definitely heard about this guy. So they're like, the North got fucking Kim Il-sung and we got this douchebag? Are you fucking serious? They're super, super bummed about it. Now, the fact that the South also viewed Kim Il-sung as a national hero is something that's relevant later, because that ties into the conspiracy that the Kim Il-sung we all know as the leader of North Korea was not the real Kim Il-sung, but was an imposter who had been replaced. But of course, nobody who fought beside him in war thought that. They were like, that's literally Kim Il-sung. That's him. But the South Korean propaganda was so extreme that they had to convince people that, no, don't worry. The North didn't get the real Kim Il-sung. The real Kim Il-sung would never. So
the Kim Il-sung, the real one, loved capitalism, loved the Americans.
Yes. This is the messaging that they gave in the South. That's not the real guy.
He would like to encourage you all to, like, his main thing was, like, he wanted to set up Samsung.
Yeah, that's what they tried to put, yes. So, Syngman Rhee, along with Kim Koo and Kim Kyu-sik, were intended to be this nucleus around which the new supposed Korean government, that's secretly actually just American military government, would be founded, with Americans just, kind of in control of everything in the background. And on October 16th, Secretary of State Burns wrote to the ambassador of China and said, I plan to utilize the services of Dr. Rhee and Kim Koo to help screen additional Koreans to be brought to Korea to get supported fully behind the economic rehabilitation plans of the current military government, and to establish a representative and expanded coalition advisory council to aid in renovating government machinery and placing suitable and representative Koreans in responsible government positions, both as working members and as titular heads below the top of the central government. This line of action can be expanded at any stage to include Korean territory not now under United States occupation, provided it is released.
Sick.
So they're like, look, we're cooking. We're making our little fucking magic military dictatorship here. We got a bunch of dudes. We got our guys. And should other territory randomly appear to be ours, we can make this work there too. The North.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's where we should leave off today. This brings us to November 1945.
So we have, in this episode, done a total of, 3 months?
August, September, 3 months.
I was not joking or being sarcastic.
I believe you.
No, this is me being extraordinarily, I have turned over a new leaf.
You love learning about Korea.
No, I actually do. I'm not but I have turned over a new leaf. I love the format.
I do not believe you.
I have been so cynical and mean for so long.
Mocked.
I'm doing a babyface turn.
Oh my God. David hates
I love
this approach.
The main thing I have learned is that the United States is best when we are just partying.
Yes.
That is, we should just be partiers.
I mean, we really should. You're not wrong. I am a little worried about how long this is going to take. I guess the main bulk of this episode was explaining the people's committees and the basis for them. I feel like that maybe that's why it took so long. We're so in the weeds and trying to actually get a lot of different sources about the people's committees. Because I think a lot of people do think the North was a puppet government, and it takes a lot of agency from the Korean people and really minimizes their fight.
Those 20 guys were probably the coolest guys ever, and like master manipulators.
With you guys in the South?
No, the 20 Soviet guys.
They
were
group. Yeah. I think that's why this episode was so kind of in the weeds with multiple people talking.
I think it was. I'm not
committees.
joking. I am literally not joking. I thought that was excellent and very good and very informative. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I don't believe you.
How am I so? What would make you okay?
It's never going to work. Now everything's just going to make it worse. All right, everybody. So that was part 2 of our Korean War series. We are going to pick up next time, starting in November of 1945. Maybe we'll go faster.
I love this. I love this pace. I learned so much.
We'll talk about Korea for the next 3 years.
That sounds.
It's a Korea podcast now.
Yeah.
It's a whole Korea podcast.
I am thrilled.
You know, actually, in real life, following up with this, is that I am organizing something that our listeners might be listening to or interested in, some interviews with a Korean anti-imperialist activist group operating here in the United States.
Oh, my God.
So we might get some supplementary content from them as well. And they do a lot of work about Korean anti-imperialism on the ground. So
this sounds fucking fabulous.
Into it all. All right, everybody. So that's it for this week's episode. If you want to go check out our episode on Kim Il-sung, it's very, very interesting what he was up to while all this was going on.
Oh, we have like a random aside about like the most yakety sax ass assassination group in history.
I don't even remember. We do. That's right. Your whole segment. Yes. It's wild. Actually, that alone is worth it. $3 a month over on our Patreon. Patreon.com/pickme. I'm scared. Bonus content abounds. You can listen to basically Susie Kim's whole book as we talk through it. And join us back here next week. We're going to get more in the weeds about what was going on in this very interesting in-between intra-war period in Korea's.
I say this with love in my heart complete with generosity of spirit.
Yeah.
I want us to start going week by week.
Oh my God. I think it's going to be interesting. This is...
Okay.
Should I speed it up?
No. Please, I am...
speed it up next.
No, do not.
I can speed it up.
You are also the fastest talker in history. You have gish galloped.
So I need to talk faster.
Yes. No, no.
Fewer details. Fewer repetition, fewer multiple sources confirming the fact.
I mean, I could shut my mouth. That would probably speed things up.
I think it's delightful. Otherwise, it's just a monologue.
All
right, everybody.
Have a good week.
We'll see you next week.